He's going to do a repair video here for you, actually just a regular maintenance video. We're going to be changing the transmission fluid in this 2004 Cavalier. Now you can see, there's no dipstick for the transmission on this model vehicle because GM decided at some point these front-wheel drive transmissions were no longer user serviceable. If we look down here on top of the transmission, we can see there's an oil filler cap. That's this black cap right here. Hopefully you guys can see that okay. And that's where you would add transmission fluid if you were topping it off at the dealer, and the dealer's going to do the procedure that we're about to do. So we're going to go underneath now, and I'll show you where the pan is. Okay, guys, we're underneath the vehicle now, and here's the engine. Here's the sump where you would drain out your oil. I've got a couple of things here. I'm going to be using just a regular oil drain pan, and then I've commandeered something from the wife's kitchen here to give it a little bit of a wider capture area, because as you can see, the shape of this transmission is like an L. And this is actually the pan here, and you'll notice there's no drain plug because, again, it wasn't designed to be user owner serviceable. There's a series of 8mm bolts that we're going to be removing. I'm going to start them by hand, and then I'm going to bring in here my electric to make it go faster. What I'm going to do is I'm going to loosen them all up, and then I'm going to position this pan towards the back. And then I'm going to drop it from the back and let the fluid start draining out here. So I'm going to start loosen these guys up, and I'm going to pause the video while I do that, and we'll come back after I got them all loosened up, and then you can see the procedure I used to get this out, so it's not as much of a mess. I've gone around and gave each bolt, just like maybe a turn or two, not enough to, actually loosen it. Now we're going to try and see if we can start releasing tension. So I'm going to start these bolts at the elbow of the L. I'm not going to take them out, but I'm going to get them to where they could probably be finger loose. Both sides. One of the other things you want to do here as you get to this point is go ahead and, I already did it, you want to go ahead and take that filler cap that I showed earlier in the video off so that we can let air come into the unit as the fluid drains. There we go. So as you start to loosen these first two, we'll start to get something. Now, I got this vehicle up on ramps, just the way I prefer to work on this. And so we got gravity going towards the back, but you see we're still going to have initially drainage at the front until it drains down enough to stop that, and then we'll be able to move to the back and complete draining. So this is going to go for a while here, and this is basically what I'm going to do. So when this slows to a small trickle or stops, I'm going to remove these front bolts almost all the way, but I'm going to leave them in because what I'm going to end up doing is I'm going to end up having this pan kind of hang down in the back. And then I'm going to remove those two at the elbow that I started with of the L, the one here and the one here. And I'm going to take off the one behind it, and I'm going to remove these two over here and the one next to it. So that's only going to be hanging by this by the time we loosen the four in the back, and that's when most of the fluid's going to come out, is when we get to the back. So I'm going to let it go until it drains down enough to continue. And before I pause the video, I tell you, the reason I used this kind of basting pan, kind of flattened it out here and cut a slit in the bottom, is it just makes it a wider catch area. This is a pretty wide shaped transmission pan for my regular oil drain pan. If you've got something that's about 24 inches wide, you'll probably be okay. If not, then you can go with something like this and improvise, or if you have a conventional kind of wide pan. Anyway, I'm going to pause this and let this drain out a bit. When it stops and we continue on, we'll pick it back up. Let this go for a few minutes, and you can see it's starting to settle down, and we're going to continue now to get the bolts off here. I think maybe waited 10 minutes. You keep checking on it, right? Because you see I had to turn the pan catcher here lengthwise because it started to run down because it's on the ramps. It started to run down back here, even though we haven't even touched those bolts. So what I'm going to proceed to do now is I'm going to start trying to remove some of these bolts. I'm going to loosen this guy next. So that's at the far extreme of the width of my pan catcher here. And then I'm going to go ahead and loose this guy up. Probably just take him off. Same with this guy here and the one behind him. Yeah, it's really a pain because there's no drain plug, but the deal is this fluid is all just sitting on top of this shallow pan. The vast majority of it's going to drain out just from cracking this front piece open, like I've showed you where it started coming out already. I've already gotten 3 quarts into the pan down here, and we've only loosened a few bolts in the front. We haven't even taken anything completely off yet. I figure we're only going to get about 5 out. The rest of it will be sitting inside the torque converter. So it's not that bad. All right, so this screw, this one here in the back, and then this one here, I'm going to take these all the way off. And then I'm going to remove this guy and this guy. And I'm going to take this guy halfway out, but I'm going to leave him just as a catcher. And then I'm going to get the one in the back corner and the one next to it. We'll see how much, a little bit more drips out. And then we'll move around and we'll keep doing the same thing until we get only this one in, this one here in the corner in, and the one in the opposite corner in, and that one in the back corner in. All the others out. At that point, we should be just getting drips like this around the corner edges. We'll wait for that to settle down, and then we'll take 2 of them out on the one end like I was mentioning, and then we'll prise this off with our finger. You can see the pan's already moving. Not going to be hard to get it to prise open a little bit, and we'll pick a corner like the back corner or the front corner, whichever one I can get the pan under most conveniently, and we'll tilt it out and get the rest of it out, and then we'll be able to drop the pan, and we'll be able to access the filter. So we know not just going to change out the fluid today, but also while we got this off, we're going to change out the filter as well, and then we'll put it back together and refill it. Something I'll show you is probably a better view on the other side, but just from this side here, so here's the sump of the engine, and here's your engine oil drain plug. This plug right up here is one of the things we're going to be using later, is the transmission fluid fill plug. And the way this works is, since there's no dipstick, and again, you can see it better from this direction, but you can see it right here. This is the boss for it, and this is the bolt that's screwed into that aluminum boss. You take this guy out, and as you add fluid into that cap I showed you, you keep filling until it starts to drip out of here. And that is the design they came up with till when this is full. It's kind of lame in my opinion, but it works. And the original intent the engineers had here was that these would not need to be serviced by owners, only by dealers. But we're not going to pay dealers to do service that we can do. All right, so again, I'm just going to wait for this steady stream to stop here, get a few more drips, and then I'm going to remove this guy, this guy, this guy, this guy, and then I'm going to loosen this one, remove this one, loosen the back one, and take out all the ones along the back. So let's give it a couple more minutes and we'll come back. Okay guys, you see we've got these bolts out. We're using this guy as a retainer in case it comes down unexpectedly. We've got these 2 out. We got this guy as a retainer, and we got that one out. We got the back corner and this corner loosened considerably. And we're working the fluid down to this corner of the pan. Right, so as soon as it stops dripping here, we're about another 10 minutes into this, so we're probably about around 20 minutes into this job. I'm going to remove the 2 screws that are in the middle behind the pan here, and I'm going to loosen this guy some more, and then we'll move the whole drain apparatus right to this corner. We'll catch what's left, and then we'll be able to remove the last screws and take the pan off. So just giving you an update here. I'm going to let it drip a little bit more here, and I'm going to keep kind of wiggling it out to kind of encourage it to come out. As you can see, it's a very shallow pan. It doesn't hold much in this center pressed out piece here. So most of what we're getting has just been filled up right to this drain plug that we were talking about earlier. And inside the pan here, I've got well over 4 quarts, so we're almost done. So we'll come back right when we get ready to do those last 2 bolts. Okay guys, let's finish this up. So I'm going to go around the back here. I'm going to take this bolt that's right here. You can feel these bolts. You see at this point the pan dropped, and that's why we left this screw up here. That's just a lesson learned from doing this from many times in the past on different vehicles. But this kind of really not the best design. I really would have preferred if GM left a drain plug on here personally, but we will work with what we've got. All right, so I'm going to take this guy completely out. And then there's one more that's next to it. Here. You can see now the pan's dropping to this one that I left on that corner. So I take this guy out, and this was the last bolt that was under any kind of significant tension. You see we're removing these guys and we're not even getting any dripping at this point, so it takes a little longer to do it this way, but it's way less mess. I probably meant to use my electric ratchet wrench, but forgot. We're all done anyway. Okay. Alright, so we get a little bit of dripping here at the back. I'll take this guy out because I don't need him. It's held by the one in the front. I've got one here in the corner that I'm going to loosen a little bit more. Not all the way. Okay, so just making sure I've got everybody. All right. At this point, it's time to kind of manipulate the pan and get the last major bits. What I'm doing is I'm pressing on the pan in the front to open up the gap in the back. There's a little bit that ran out there. Okay. So now I'm going to remove this guy in the corner. Pressing the pan up to keep it sealed while I do that. Just because I know my hand's going to move my catch pan out of the way. Alright, get this guy out of the way. Put him back. And now our big amount comes out. Pull the pan back a little bit this way. Alright. Now we've just got what's actually in the pan. I'm going to take the bolt that's in the front out, and I'll let it tone a little bit more, and that should be it. Okay. There's still going to be a little bit in there. Take the last bolt we left in this corner out. And just kind of carefully bring it down with the gasket, tilt it back, try to get as much as you can out. Okay. All right, this is our filter here, this black plastic thing. So next thing we're going to do is we're going to take this off. Just kind of give it a little turn, a little twist, and it will work its way out of the little bushing that holds it here in the back. Now this is going to be full of fluid too, so we tilt it in and just lay it in our catch pan and let it drain. Alright, so now we're going to get our new filter. There's a bushing here. Clean this up a little bit. You can see this black bushing. You know, sometimes you can leave these in, sometimes you can replace them if they've been in for a while. I like to not do it every time, because every time you take this out there's always a chance you damage the aluminum boss that it's pushed into. I had already had this changed last time, so I like to do every other one, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it anyway just to show you how it's done. So let's take a look at the pan too. There's something I want to show on that. So when you take a look at the pan, let me kind of pause the video, get out from under the car, and then show you some of the stuff. First thing you want to check when you get in the pan is you want to look and see if there's any, large pieces of metal. There's going to be dirt and small things associated with the magnet that looks like, black or gray dust. That's okay. Just looking for big chunks. If you got big chunks and chips of something, you may have a larger problem looming. The other thing you want to look for are these two circular magnets. This is a change that was done after original production, and I can't remember exactly what year it started. You can look it up on Google. There's a technical service bulletin, but you can pick up a pair of these round magnets, GM part number 29535617, and these go in place of the single square one. So if you got the single square one, or you only have one circular one, you should pick up one of these, because the technical service bulletin from GM for all the vehicles that were using this particular transmission called for putting 2 of these in at some point. The other thing we've got here is we're going to go ahead and replace the gasket with another GM part here. So this is part number 242-03590 was the replacement gasket. Now these gaskets, you know, they can be reused because they do have metal inserts where all the screws go to take relief. But I like to replace them periodically just in case I don't want to deal with a leak. So we got that. And then we've got our new filter, which is another Delco part, AC242-21762. And this filter will also include, if I can get it to shuffle out here, a new bushing that we were talking about. I'm going to open this guy up. So this is what you were seeing before. That's, you know, we were seeing it from the bottom, but it's pushed into the boss of the transmission's aluminum casting. And then the filter piece sits in that. It just gives it, it's kind of like a thick rubberized coating on the inside, and then it's looks like a kind of a galvanized or plated steel component. It just holds it in nice and snug, because there's nothing else holding this thing in other than this bushing and then being pressed up against the pan on this raised ridge. So now we're going to go replace this. So we're going to go back under the transmission, and we're going to take out the bushing, put the new one in. But first, I'm going to clean this guy up. I'm not going to show that. You know, it's kind of self-explanatory. I'm going to drain out the rest of the fluid that's in here. We're going to take our magnets out and clean all this crud that's been attracted to them, put them back in the right position, get our new gasket laying on there, clean off all the dirt and crud that's accumulated around it, and also going to clean the bottom of it as well. And I'm going to clean the bolts that we took out. And then when that's all done, we'll swap out the bushing, put in the new filter, and pop on the new pan, and I'll show you how to top off the fluid. So we'll come back to that in a few minutes. So you can see we've cleaned off the pan here on both sides. You know, I'm not trying to clean the bottom as much as the top, but I am trying to make sure that all the edges, I don't have any crud that might get in when we're trying to position and place this. We've cleaned under the magnets, we've gotten any filings off of them, we've cleaned the inside. Now I'm going to put the gasket on and prepare it to be assembled after we get done with the filter. Going to give it one last shot with some compressed air. Open up our gasket here. Looks like he's double bagged. There's some studs here, this guy and this guy, that are alignment studs. The long version is going to point into the transmission, and then there's a small version that sits on the pan itself. So this guy's all ready to be bolted back on. And sometimes there's a little bit of a warpage to these because there's metal in the middle. It'll all straighten out when we tighten it up. This all looks good. So this is ready to go. And now we're going to go underneath and do that bushing and filter. So we'll come back under there. Let's wrap this up. You know, I've left the oil pan out here because there's still going to be some little bit of drip. So I'm going to come across here now and just go along the edge of the mating surface for the pan, just in case I've got any crud right around the edge. You know, I don't want to have any of that accidentally get knocked in while we're shuffling the pan around, because invariably we'll slide it back and forth as we try to align it. So I just go around with a clean towel, do that all along the mating surface and the edge. The other piece of advice I'd say is, you know, don't do this on a windy day, because you don't want to have any sand, dust, or dirt or anything get in here. This is the worst enemy of a modern automatic transmission, is to get any kind of crud in here that might get involved with jamming up one of the solenoids, causing some additional friction. All right, let's get that bushing out that we were talking about. Now, there's probably a special tool you can use if you're a dealer. That all I do is I take a small flathead screwdriver and I just tap it in here until I can deform this guy. And then I get a larger one, and I just keep going. You might have to block your view for just a second here to get that in there. But what I'm trying to do is just go around the edge very carefully without damaging the aluminum. So you always want to make sure this guy's flat and hitting the lip of the steel bushing and not hitting the aluminum. So we're going to not go all the way around, but we're going to give a good surface to this. If you get any kind of shavings or anything, just reach on and knock them off so they don't end up inside. All right, and then we're just going to kind of give it a harder pull until we get something like this. So we want to get this guy slightly deformed, just like that. And as we deform him, he's going to let go. Longer screwdriver here. You just got to be patient. It does take a little bit of time. I might want to get a bigger screwdriver. I guess I didn't bring my larger one. So let me pause for a second and go get my wider screwdriver, make this go a little faster. Okay, this is the guy I was looking for here. Just a little bit wider. Yeah, so now we can get in here and really deform this very fast. Then what I want to try and do is just try to get it loosened up with the pliers. If not, just keep deforming it. The key thing is you do not want to hit the aluminum, only the steel. See if we can get him out now. At some point you'll deform it enough where you'll be able to remove it, just like that. All right, now with a clean rag, we're going to go around. We're going to make sure that get this all cleaned up. Then we're going to take our new bushing. I like to take just a little bit of the fluid that's in the pan. Just put a little bit of that on there. Kind of get it centered like that. Then if I can find the tool I had out here, there it is. Take a little rubber hammer. And just gently start getting it in. It might pop out on you, but it's more important that it goes in straight. Once it starts looking like it's going in straight, you can switch to like a harder plastic end if you have like I've got, or just go to a rubber mallet and drive it the rest of the way in until it's flush. That's it. So if I come up over here, make sure I got it on this end. All right. Couple more taps just for good luck. How about that? All right, now let's put that filter in. Now when I put the filter in, I don't like to put any fluid on there. I like that to be a dry seal. And push this up just like that. And that's it. All right, so like I said before, that's all that's holding this guy is just the friction of that bushing, and that's why they like to see you replace them periodically. All right, now let's bring our pan down here that we had all pre-flighted. Line up our front pin. And then we're going to start putting some screws in here, finger tight to hold it. Back here. All right, and I'll hold it so that we can get the others going. At this point, you know, we're almost done. After we get this guy buttoned up, we're going to top off the fluid. I'm going to use a electric ratchet wrench here in a minute to get these guys driven in a little bit further, but I like to start them by hand first, just so there's no strip threads. We've got 3 more in the back here. Definitely move our pan out of the way. Last one. Okay, let's tighten them up. Going slow at first, right, because I want to make sure this gasket pin is in here. And I want to make sure I feel the other pin right back in this corner here. I can't see it, but maybe you guys can see it on the film. I don't know. And then we're going to go around and tighten up all the other ones. Again, just going slowly. Do the corners first. And then we'll get the ones in the middle, and then we'll come back around with a torque wrench and finish the job. All right, now the ones in the middle. All right, like I said, I'm going to get a torque wrench and torque these guys up. And now we're ready to start filling up the fluid. We're going to use Dextron 6 in the case of this vehicle and its year. And again, like I said, we're then going to take this drain fill plug off, and we're going to see, we're going to fill it until it overflows. Now, what I like to do is I don't necessarily depend on just this. I like to put in as much as I got out. So, you know, I take a look at my pan here. You know, if I took out 5 quarts, I put 5 quarts in. I took out 4 quarts, I put 4 quarts in, I run it for a little while, and then I might check this guy to see if it was maybe low in the first place. The other thing to remember too, what I'll say before I pause here, is like when you got it up on ramps like this and you've emptied out the transmission, don't start it up and try and, you know, back it off the ramps until you put some fluid in there. So before I do anything, after I torque this, I'm going to put 3 quarts in just to make sure it's all loaded up, in case I accidentally forget and do something like that. All right, so let me pause for a minute, and I forgot to bring my torque wrench out here. Let me go get that. We'll button this guy up, and then we'll move up to the top, start adding some fluid, and then we'll back it down, and we'll show how we check this level over here. Torque wrench, we're going to torque these guys up. Now, the service manual is interesting in this respect. One section of this transmission for the 2003, 4, 5 Cavs, it says 89 inch-pounds, but then when the actual assembly, it says 124. So I'm going to go with the 124 because That's kind of like what I remember it being, so that's what I got set here. So anyway, you don't just go all the way around. You go in the corners first. Just torque the guy up to 124 in each of the corners. And then just go get the ones you missed on opposite ends. Just kind of alternate around so it goes down nice and even. This is the last thing we're doing underneath. After this, we will go above and start adding the fluid like I mentioned. Last one. Okay. There we go. All right, they're all torqued up. We got a new filter in. We got our new bushing in. We're all ready to fill her up. Like I said, I'm going to go ahead and put 3 quarts in. Then we will open this drain plug. We'll get a little bit of it out, even though we got it up on ramps. I put another quart in, make sure it's okay. Then we'll bring it down and we'll level it off. So I'll pause and go to do that now. You know, here's that little fill cap that I was mentioning, and again, just to avoid getting any kind of dirt or anything like that, and I'm just cleaned off all the crud and debris that might be around it. All right, so the next thing we're going to need, you're going to have a funnel like this, one with a very long neck. This particular one, I don't remember where I picked it up at. I hardly ever use it. It looks brand new, but it's made in the USA, so that's why it's in my garage. Anyway, so this goes down in where we took off, so you can see we took off the cap down here. This guy's going to go in where we took the cap off, and that's going to allow us to start adding new transmission fluid. Like I said, before even trying to do the level bolt, we know that adding 2 or 3 is going to be fine. And you just got to be careful about how fast you put it in, because it can overflow on you. Because right underneath this, there's like a casting in there. It's like a baffle that kind of gets in the way of the flow of the fluid, so it can bounce back. So you're not going to have to. You're again going to have to be patient. It's not going to be a fast fill. All right, and again, so you know you don't need to necessarily film me do this. All right, I'm going to do 3 of these. I'm going to cap it off. I'm going to get it off the ramps. I'm going to put 1 more in it, and then we're going to take that plug off, and we're going to see where we are as we put the 5th in. We'll come back after this. All right, guys. Actually, after I got this thing off the ramps, I remembered something from the last time I did this. There's not enough clearance underneath the vehicle to get under there and use the drain plug method. You got to have a lift to do that, or you got to get the guy up on 4 jack stands so it's nice and level. So what I did instead is what I do sometimes when I have this situation with these kind of transmissions. I just replaced what I took out. So I measured out that we drained about 7, a little less than 7 quarts of transmission fluid by dropping the pan and changing the filter. And I checked the service manual, and it told me that a pan drop should be 6.9 quarts, and that's about what we got. So we're just going to do what we call eyeballing it. And I put in 6 full quarts, and then I just left about a 1/5 in the bottle of the 7th one, and I call it close enough. Drive it for a while, and next time I get it up on a lift, I'll check that drain plug. But I hope this helps you out, right? You're going to have the same problem if you don't have a lift. You're not going to be able to do it that factory service way. And this is a next best way than to do it that way, if you can just remember how much you took out. If you know you were running low, then you're going to have no choice but to get it up on a lift, get it up on 4 jack stands nice and level so that you can use that drain plug. The other catch with that drain plug is you gotta have the engine running periodically while you do that, or you won't get an accurate reading. All right, I hope this video helps you out. It's not something you do all the time. I do it about every 100,000 miles, but it is a good thing to keep doing and keep the vehicle going. Thanks for watching.